In a modern enterprise environment, systems like SAP Convergent Charging evaluate millions of individual usage events, generating massive volumes of raw rating data daily. But you cannot and should not hard-code general ledger accounts directly into that upstream rating engine. Doing so creates a brittle architecture that breaks the moment a new product launches. This creates a gap between convergent invoicing, which handles the business logic of the charges, and contract accounts receivable and payable, or FICA, which requires strict financial accounting. SAP BRIM bridges this gap using a multi-layered data taxonomy. It classifies every single consumption record before it ever reaches the ledger. We are going to configure that taxonomy. We'll set up billable item types, define FICA transactions, and build the specific SPRO mapping that drives automated account determination. Our goal is to construct this mapping so that high-volume usage data flows into the subledger through a repeatable, automated process, keeping the accounting logic entirely separate from the rating engine. Configuration inside Convergent Invoicing starts with the Billable Item Class. In this SAP GUI list, we see active entries like TData and TTEL. These classes provide a technical skeleton, dictating exactly which database tables and function modules will store the incoming items. But a database table doesn't tell us what the charge actually means. To define business significance, we branch down from the class to define the billable item type. This differentiates the transaction's exact nature, whether it's a one-time activation fee, a recurring charge, or variable usage. This classification controls how items are grouped together during the actual invoicing run. You define these item types in the standard SPRO menu path under Convergent Invoicing, Basic Functions, and then Billable Items. Once the types are defined, the final step in Convergent Invoicing is assigning them to specific subprocesses. These subprocesses act as operational filters. They dictate exactly which data profiles are pulled into specific billing runs, allowing you to process usage records entirely separately from recurring fees. Through this configuration, every raw consumption event receives a clear tag representing its business intent, long before it attempts to hit the financial ledger. Moving downstream to contract accounting, or FICA, we encounter a structural barrier. FICA does not natively understand convergent invoicing item types. Instead, FICA requires its own native identification parameters. Every financial document must carry a main transaction and a subtransaction. The main transaction establishes the broad financial category, like a general bucket for a charge. The subtransaction applies the specific identifier within that category, narrowing it down to an exact event, like a dunning charge or return charge. Together, the combination of these two parameters rigidly defines the item's financial nature and behavior within the subledger. You map out this architecture in the FICA SPRO path under Basic Functions, Postings and Documents, Document, and Maintain Document Assignments. Here, you must configure the exact 4-digit alphanumeric codes for both the main transactions and their corresponding subtransactions. By defining these transactions, you create the rigid financial targets that the incoming upstream data payload must hit. The system now needs a mechanism to translate the convergent invoicing business tags into those FICA financial targets. This translation happens inside convergent invoicing posting areas 8120 and 8121. Think of this as a translation matrix requiring specific interface components like account assignment to be active. On the input side, the system reads the incoming payload's subprocess and billable item type. It cross-references these tags and automatically outputs the correct FICA main and subtransaction, attaching them directly to the item. With the transactions derived, the final requirement is the account determination ID. This is defined in the FICA setup by navigating to Basic Functions, Contract Accounts, and executing Define Account Determination IDs for contracts. The system takes the newly derived main and subtransactions and combines them with this determination ID. That precise combination dictates exactly which general ledger account the item will post to. This mapping completely automates complex general ledger routing. You get strict financial compliance downstream without having to build a single hard-coded accounting rule into the product rating engine. We can see this complete blueprint by looking at the anatomy of a billable item on screen. If we trace a single payload, it begins with its unique source transaction ID, which anchors it to the original rating event. That payload moves into Convergent invoicing, where it is routed through a specific subprocess, like BSDA for data, ensuring it is grouped correctly for billing. Within that subprocess, it is tagged with a billable item type, such as DAT1, recording its exact business intent. The item then passes across the semantic bridge through posting areas 8120 and 8121, where the system reads those CI tags. It immediately emerges on the other side, automatically assigned its correct FICA main and sub-transactions. Finally, those transaction codes pair with the account determination ID, slotting the payload perfectly into its target general ledger account. This architecture maintains a decoupled abstraction layer. If the business introduces a new data product, the core ledger remains isolated and safe. You simply map the new product to the existing translation matrix. This allows the enterprise to process billions of distinct consumption events at scale, entirely automatically, without ever manually touching the core general ledger configurations. This multi-layered approach to account determination is what maintains the separation between high-volume business logic and final financial reporting. It provides a structural solution that keeps the subledger stable under massive transactional loads.